So Jamaica shares relationships with many other countries across the world and grants privileges and immunities to incoming diplomats in accordance with diplomatic practice and our constitution. And this morning we discuss exactly what this legal framework looks like and what impact it could have on diplomatic postings and relations. We've got Alexander Shaw with us, an attorney at law, to shed some light on diplomatic relations. Morning, sir. Welcome to Smile Jamaica.
Morning.
And I think we're having this discussion because what happened recently, that apparently, I say this, you could correct me if I'm wrong, that Jamaica refused to give diplomatic immunity to someone's spouse because it was same sex. Is that right?
Well, that is what is circling,
okay.
In the public.
Okay, just to be clear, so Jamaica is not saying they can't come to Jamaica. They're just saying if you come to Jamaica, we can't give you diplomatic immunity.
That is so.
And that is by our law,
yes,
constitution.
Because our constitution does not recognize same-sex marriage.
Okay.
By, I think, Section 18.2, it doesn't recognize any marriage outside of a man and a woman.
Okay.
So
what is diplomatic immunity?
Well, so the starting point is that a state cannot enforce jurisdiction on another state, right? And so diplomats come to your country to really carry out acts or responsibilities of their state. And so whilst they are in your state, they should enjoy certain privileges, because if you were to prosecute them, it means that you are claiming jurisdiction over them. And so they benefit from certain privileges that is, free from criminal prosecution. So
stop right there for a second. So if a diplomat who has diplomatic immunity comes to Jamaica, kills someone in Jamaica, we can't arrest them?
Well, you really can't arrest them. You should really allow their state to deal with it. That is, quote-unquote, what it means. But the argument, though, is that a diplomat, or the principle emanating from the Vienna Convention, is that a diplomat should respect the laws and cultural differences of the receiving state. And in this case, Jamaica would be the receiving state.
Right.
So insofar as Jamaica would grant certain privileges, the anticipation, the expectation is that you would not violate the cultural norms. You would try to adhere much as possible to the values of that society. Because, as you know, there will be cultural differences, and there are like 70 other countries that don't recognize same-sex marriage. So it's really, a watershed moment for us here in Jamaica.
It is, because I know right now, as you say, what is circulating is the issue of the same-sex marriage, but there are countries also that recognize polygamy.
Yes.
So, and Jamaica does not have laws, to my knowledge, do we, that allow polygamy?
No, because the only marriage we observe or we respect is the marriage of one man and a woman.
Right. So to me, it's the gray area I'm trying to understand, because if a diplomat comes from South Africa, for example, that does recognize polygamy, and says, I'm coming with my 3 wives,
yes.
Do we also say, well, we don't recognize marriage in that sense, so you got to pick a wife, because we can't recognize the other
And
two?
that is why the onus is on the sending state to select someone who will not go against, or whose values, principles, morals will not conflict with that of the receiving state. Because it is mutual respect and understanding. As I've said before, you will have countries. Well, countries have different cultural norms and practices, and so you really can't enforce. Because when you do something like that, you're pretty much enforcing or trying to influence the other state to accept your way of life.
Yeah. I know you didn't come here to speak of that incident specifically.
Yes.
I think you're telling us about the laws and constitution, but I want to go back to that case just for a second. So as far as you know, our government didn't do anything wrong?
No, because in essence, if we were to accept what is being suggested, it means we're going against our law, and our constitution, as far as I know it, is the supreme law. And as a sovereign state, we have the right to determine our values, our way of life.
But if I'm going to give, or if the government would give a diplomatic immunity to a same-sex couple,
Yes.
that doesn't necessarily mean, I'm asking,
Yes.
that doesn't necessarily mean we agree with same-sex relationships, do it?
But what you are pretty much doing, you are acceding to a violation of your laws, because it's not just the Constitution. We also have the Offences Against the Persons Act that, criminalizes buggery. So we have to also bear that in mind.
Okay.
So on the one hand, you don't want to violate your laws, but you also want to respect the diplomatic relations that you would have had over the many years. As I've said before, the Vienna Convention speaks clearly about, this mutual respect and understanding.
All right. I see here, my producer said the State Department social media mentioned a 5-year accreditation policy for diplomats. From what I'm getting from what you're saying, is it that, because I want to figure out, so when does it become standard across all countries that certain things must exist? Or is it that every country decides that, well, for my country, if you're coming here, you have a 5-year accreditation process. For my country, this is what you have. Is this how it works? At what point do all diplomatic people meet and say, well, yes, we have differences, but the common thing must be these things?
Well, the onus is really on the parties to find a common ground. And I think certainly in terms of US, I believe it was in 2021. I could be corrected there, but the tenure is for 5 years, and outside of that, it's discretionary. All right. So countries enter into agreement on a day-to-day basis, and it's based on that mutual understanding of what it is that we're bargaining about. Other countries may have different rules in terms of what it is that they will accept and won't accept, and such is the case with Jamaica.
Yeah. By the way, it says here, ambassadors, charge d'affaires, and deputy chief of mission are exempt from the 5-year accreditation policy. So apparently those, depending on whether it's the country they're coming from, or we could say, if you want to stay 4 more years, you can.
So there are different classes of, persons who benefit from different privileges.
I think the only argument here with me would be, I'm not certain I agree that if we allow that, we are saying we agree with you guys, that's the only area I think to me is a little bit grey.
Yes.
That I'm not certain that if the government says, all right, I come and whoever come with me.
But it's not as if you can't come, but the recognition,
you can't get the diplomatic
there are
immunity.
certain privileges.
Right.
Recently, we saw where our justice minister was saying that he wasn't going to grant marriage license to persons, to homosexuals. I think that was perhaps the story that what was carried. And so that is a privilege. Granting of a marriage license is a privilege, right? And if you are not to recognize same-sex marriage for a diplomat, it goes against the grain of your cultural values. And it's an issue that runs deep. And so our elected officials can't treat with it lightly, simply because it violates, core principles in Jamaica. And, we're not there yet. It's a discussion that we have to have, as a country. And so for them to just accede to that request, it is going to cause some amount of disquiet, which it has been causing, because we, there is
disquiet with whom, though?
With the public.
Okay.
And it is largely because of how our society is structured. We are predominantly a Christian society, and so you will have different groups coming out, either in support or, against the position. And so we as a country, and I don't think a country should, force you to reach a position.
Yeah. We're going to go now, but by the way, are the kids of the parents or the kids of whoever gets diplomatic immunity, are the kids
Well,
also
the family,
offered?
because I do
the
believe,
entire family?
Yes, because the convention, I think it is somewhere in the 30s, speak about, you know, certain privileges being granted to the family, the household, you know, of diplomats. They may not get all the privileges, but certainly if you're part of my family, then one would ordinarily expect that you'd benefit from certain, you know, privileges.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, sir. Blessings. Sit
Thank
with
you
us
for
for a
having me.
while. Attorney at Law, Alexander Shaw.
Still to come, should we raise the age of consent?